from the past.
Please listen carefully.
CoCo.
Welcome to the CoCo Crew Podcast. A delicious adventure into the world of retro computing news and information. Featuring the Tandy Color Computer.
Hey, you got your CoCo 3 yet?
CoCo.
All right, you are listening to episode 66 of the CoCo Crew Podcast. This episode of the CoCo Crew Podcast is brought to you by the numbers 1, 5, 0, and 3 more zeros. Yeah, that's right. We've crossed the 150,000 downloads mark. Hooray! Woo!
Woohoo! All right.
Very exciting. It's nice to have that documented. We probably crossed that line a little ways back, but due to hysterical errors, we lost count of some of our early downloads for about the first year, or half a year at least. So anyway, welcome. So here I am. Let's see, who am I? I'm John Linville, and I'm joined by my regular hosts. Let's see, we've got Mr. Neil Blanchard. Hello, Neil.
Hello, everyone.
Mr. Mike Rowan. Hello, Mike.
Hello.
And of course, Mr. Boise Pete. Hello, Boise.
Good evening, everyone.
And if Boise and I sound a little different than usual, it's because both of us have recently crossed a birthday line. So, anyway, so this is the end of November 2020. CoCo Fest is ostensibly 5 months away. That may or may not be true, though. We'll get to that in a little bit. Candy Assembly is about 10 months away. I guess that might not be true, but we're sure hoping that one's going to stay locked in for for the next year.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Let's see. So, what's everyone been up to? Who's got a recent or current project?
Well, I am in the height of assembling gamesters. That's keeping me busy right now.
Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah. I hear that there's one flying over this way.
There is.
Boise, very jealously
sorry.
looking into, hoping that he gets his delivery. Well, see, I was doing a little project recently. A few months back, we had some discussion where someone had implemented a server for the deload command that's available on the CoCo 1 and 2 under Extended Color Basic. That had been one of my long-term someday projects. So it kind of reinterested me in it, to reinvigorate it a little bit, and also had been looking for a while for something to do of some significance written in Python, which I've always wanted to learn a bit more about, but never quite got to. It's kind of at the I can sort of read it stage. So finally got a chance to put those together. So I put together a deload server for myself, written in Python. Still kind of working on it. I think right now it's kind of mediocre or okay, but not real pretty Python. So I'm not ready to release that, but having some fun. Experimenting with deload for basic programs. Wanted to experiment with deload them, which I finally was able to do, but along the way I discovered that deload M is actually broken in Extended Color Basic 1.0, one of the fixes that account for the 1.1 Extended Color Basic. So that was a nice little piece of investigative archaeology, or whatever, figure that one out. That's awesome. So yeah, it's kind of neat to see that. Anyone else, Mike, or you been up to anything other than I know you have a grueling work schedule lately?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. I didn't have a lot of time. I did dust off. I got a GoTech that I purchased some time ago and still haven't assembled it. I actually got it right before I moved. So I've been dusting that off. I'm hoping to get that going here.
Cool. And Boise, you just sitting around being handsome and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I'm doing the best I can to just be me,
Oh, Lord.
It's coming easier and easier these days.
Is it? Look forward to. All right. Well, what about anybody pick up anything lately? Any acquisitions, eBay or otherwise? Well, I know Boise got a Gamester coming his way.
Yep, that's coming. Nothing else at the moment. I'm looking forward to that Gamester, and heck, you can't get them on eBay. You have to get them from the source, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
They're definitely worth it.
I was looking. I think it was related to the robot arm I bought a while back. I was looking and some documentation I dug up on it online, and it referenced a book that I then found a copy on eBay. It's called "How to Solve It by Computer" by R.G. Dromey, D-R-O-M-E-Y. And it's, I'm sure it's not the kind of book everybody would love, but it's kind of describes some techniques for doing things on the computer, certain algorithms for, computing square roots and, interesting stuff like that.
Cool.
Anyway, not for everyone, but I picked that up, thought it was kind of cool. Oh, and then recently I probably paid like $10 for this, but those instruction or those info cards or whatever you could get for a CPU that basically give you like a breakdown of their instruction sets and maybe the pinout or basic architectural stuff or whatever that they used to produce for the various CPUs. I found one for the Motorola 6801/68701/6803. They're all architecturally pretty much the same. And, of course, that's the CPU that's in the MC10. Thought it looked kind of cool, seemed to be in decent shape. And so I thought, well, what the heck? It's my birthday.
Yeah,
Mike, you bought anything recently? Anything cool?
Well, yeah, I actually just ordered Darren Atkins MCX32SD.
Oh, yeah.
Ed Snyder is selling those, so I've got one on order. It's shipped, but it's not here yet.
Yeah, very cool.
That'll be fun to plug into the MC10.
Yeah, I've got one on the way myself. Hopefully that'll be a cool addition.
Yeah, same here.
Cool. Well, that's probably a good enough introduction. So why don't we take a little break, and then we'll be back with some announcements.
It's Radio Shack's spectacular Christmas sale. I just got a great buy for my stereo system. These Radio Shack speakers on sale for $39.95 each. That's half price, a real bargain. A two-way bass reflex system, incredible bass, clear, crisp highs, and a rich walnut veneer finish. Looks great, sounds great. And for a limited time, get the matching walnut veneer 64K color computer too. It entertains, educates, and manages. It's expandable and affordable, and features a rich walnut veneer finish. On sale now for just $99.95. Only at Radio Shack. We walnut veneer everything.
All right, welcome back, CoCo Cruisers. Now it's time for our announcements. Of course, you're listening to the CoCo Crew Podcast. We're available on Twitter with the Twitter handle of @CoCo Crew Podcast. That's @CoCoCrewPodcast. If you're prone to sending tweets, then feel free to tweet at us. Let's see, of course, we are available on Facebook. So we have a group called the CoCo Crew Podcast. That's 4 separate words. So if you are on the Book of Faces, feel free to come and check out our group. Join the group. Maybe you'll get some early access to news or announcements, or occasionally post something here or there just for fun. We'd love to have you part of the group. Let us know you appreciate the podcast. So we are a podcast, so we, of course, are available on Apple Podcasts, Google Play. Of course, we have our own RSS feed that we publish through CoCoCrew.org. We're also available through Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. However you want to consume the podcast audio-wise, I think that should have you covered. If there's something that's missing, feel free to let us know, and we'll try to hook you up. Let's see. Also, we have been taking our audio podcasts for some time and converting them to a video format and posting them on YouTube. The primary benefit of consuming the CoCo Crew on YouTube is that YouTube actually has a pretty good subtitling service when you run the videos. So if subtitles might be helpful for you. Either, perhaps you have problems with your hearing, or maybe you are not a native speaker and can find the subtitles useful, then check us out on YouTube and enhance your experience. Let's see, we are a member of the Throwback Network. For those that aren't familiar, the Throwback Network is a list of retro-themed podcasts. So if you're caught up on back episodes of the CoCo Crew, feel free to check out the Throwback Network, where you may find something else to fill your listening time. Also, we're listed on the Game by Game Podcast Information Hub. This also is a list of similar podcasts by topic. In this case, these are all podcasts relating to gaming technology from maybe the late 70s, the 80s, maybe the early 90s. Old computers, old gaming consoles, that kind of cool stuff. So, again, if you're caught up on the CoCo Crew podcast, then feel free to check us out. Check out the other listings on the Game by Game Podcast Information Hub. The audio for the CoCo Crew podcast is hosted by Cyber Ears. If you have need to host audio on the internet, whether it be your own podcast or recordings from your church or club or other organization, feel free to check out Cyber Ears, where you will get your audio on your terms. If you want to reach the hosts of the CoCo Crew podcast, we have email addresses set up where you can reach us all. First three will reach all the active hosts. We, of course, have show, SHOW, at CoCoCrew.org. That's at CoCoCrew.org. Podcast, PODCAST, and feedback, FEEDBACK, both of those at CoCoCrew.org. If you want to reach the individual hosts of the CoCo Crew podcast, then we each also have an email address available. Of course, I'm John, JOHN, at CoCoCrew.org. Neil is Neil, NEIL, at CoCoCrew.org. Mike is Mike, MIKE, at CoCoCrew.org. And then hopefully you see the pattern. Boise is Boise, BOISY, at CoCoCrew.org. Only one of those is likely to have anyone mess it up. And that's only because of history shows. But anyway, we're available via email, so do reach out if you need to talk to us or want to say something, got information to share. You just want to reminisce, tell us what a good job we've done, what a poor job we've done, why you hate us, why you love us, anything like that. Feel free to reach out. All right, those are our standard announcements. At this point, we normally announce what's coming up in the real life that we think our listeners might enjoy. This, of course, has been kind of difficult given the past year and the pandemic and the reaction to the pandemic. There are no live events. There are a few virtual events, or there have been. I'm not even sure where that stands at this point because, to be honest, they don't interest me that much, and so I haven't been tracking them. That said, on the books officially for April 24th and 25th of 2021, we have CoCo Fest for 2021. Now, unofficially, it's starting to sound like there's some nervousness about that, given the recent uptick in the virus or whatever, as we hear reported on the news. There's some energy to either move that back or postpone it out. There's even some who want to move it, just skip all of 2021 as well. This makes me very unhappy and sad. But, I understand the sentiment. And if, it's always possible there'll be another situation where they just can't have it due to local regulations or whatever. I don't know. But until that changes, that's still the date on the books is April 24th through 25th of 2021. I will say there's also talk of CoCo Fest having some sort of virtual event between now and the end of the year, which probably means if it happens, it will have already happened by the time we have another episode. But if it does happen, we'll probably mention it, but I don't think we'll be able to alert you in advance. Except, if you go back and join the CoCo Crew Podcast Facebook group, we'll probably announce it there. So,
I was going to say another event that's going to go virtual is the World of Commodore, which is December 5th. That's the first Saturday. I noticed that they're going virtual this year.
Yeah. Well, it's happened a lot. Anyway, I'm not keeping track of any of those or many of those. kind of out of my how I'm dealing with my own depression, I guess.
Yeah, no, I get it. Same here.
Moving on, of course, all the other event we have on the books for 2021, which I think we're at least more reluctant to change, and hopefully it's far enough out that we won't have any pressure to change by then. But of course, talking about October 1st through 3rd of 2021, and that'll be Tandy Assembly 2021. It will be in Springfield, Ohio, and it will be, the coolest Tandy event of the year, no doubt.
It's the week after CoCo Fest next year.
Hopefully that's not true, but who knows? It's about the time that Glen Sad usually has a picnic, I guess. So, we'll see how that goes. Well, that covers our announcements for this month.
Fred.
Yeah?
Remember when I wanted to run the business on our color computer?
Yeah.
And you said it was too hard to move back and forth through all those different programs.
Yeah.
And you said all the software would cost $1,000.
Yeah.
Well, you want to hear something?
No.
VIP Library integrates all the applications we need, and guess who sells it?
Tiny Tim.
No, SD Enterprises.
Swell.
All 6 VIP applications are combined onto one disk. VIP Database, VIP Writer, VIP Spell, VIP Calc, Terminal, and Disk Zap. So we can do mail merge, finances, correspondence, all with VIP Library.
Yeah?
Yeah, and it's not $1,000. It's just $169.95.
Wonderful.
Finally, we'll have time to go see a movie.
No.
VIP Library, the only integrated application suite your CoCo will ever need.
All right, welcome back, CoCo Cruisers. I hope you're enjoying the show so far, and hopefully you still will after we're done with this one. So now it's time for the news.
First news article is from Chet Simpson, and he has uploaded the F9D ASM compatible info files for color baseball, buzzard bait, and ASA to his GitHub.
Yeah. ASA in this case is an audio spectrum analyzer.
Yeah, I was going to just mention that. Yeah, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. If you've been a listener for a while, I think at some point I discussed disassemblers and specifically the F9 DASM. Probably the best 6809 disassembler in town, at least for free. I think that there might be some stuff available that you had to pay for. I don't know if it still runs. Who knows? Anyway, yeah, it's pretty cool. It's at least educational on how to do some of the black art stuff of disassembling. Right. Of course, the info files, you set up. Basically, you're feeding information to the disassembler so that when it gets to a certain block of numbers, it knows which block of numbers is code and which block of numbers is strings or tables of mathematical data or just graphics or, whatever. So it's helpful for getting a more meaningful disassembly. Very cool.
Yeah, that is. All right, our next news article is from Joel Avey. These are the 4 8-bit artifact color palette files from Jason Law that Jason Law shared with him back in 2009, it looks like here. Yeah. That's a name I haven't heard in a long time. I remember when I got back into the CoCo, altogether, it was a name I used to see come up all the time. Really don't know what happened to Jason.
Yeah, well, yeah, he shared these files at that time. I got the same files from the same person. And we use them to do picture conversion utilities and picture frame kind of applications or whatever with the 8-bit color mode that later I did a YouTube video on and presentation at CoCo Fest or whatever.
I remember that.
Yeah, so we've been seeing a lot of activity with the 8-bit CoCo 3, 8-bit NTSC artifact mode from Robert Steig. We've been seeing him post a lot. He was posting a lot of pictures of a tiger or a leopard, I guess, and then he started posting pictures of this one chick. I don't know. He's been posting a lot on the group lately. I'm sure if you're monitoring the Facebook group, you've been seeing it.
Yeah.
And I think he's tweaking the palette settings some for his own palette, doing similar things. But these were kind of the basics. They got several of us started 10 or 11 years ago working with that. So interesting to know.
Yep, be very handy for game development too. I would imagine.
Oh yeah, well, especially if you don't want to dig that deeply into how it works, you just want to make it work.
Yep.
It's definitely nice to have somebody just give you the palette and say, here.
Right.
The spread of colors is broad enough that you can do lots of conversions with reasonable results without having to worry too much about tweaking unless you just have to have the perfect picture. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Very cool. All right, our next news article is from Jim Rye. Adventures in VCC number 2. Looks like we're still working on adding features here.
Yeah, well, so I think this is an extension to, we had him last month where he had added the cut and paste to VCC.
That's right.
There's some kind of trick where you can get, instead of 240 some characters on the line, you can get 255 or something like that. Mm-hmm. And somehow or another, he's added that into his implementation of the cut and paste, so you can actually cut and paste full-size lines. Pretty cool. It's nice to have one less thing to worry about if you're messing with that sort of stuff.
Oh yeah, man, that'd be very handy. I think a lot of people use VCC. It seems still pretty popular.
Yeah, the people do use it. Like I say, it's not my favorite for a couple of reasons, but every time I discuss them, then there's a couple of guys that get really angry at me. So I'll just mention it's not my favorite, and you should check it, see what else is available, particularly if you're concerned about accuracy. But one of those people even started a little argument with me about what it means to be accurate as an emulator. So we won't go into details there either. But VCC remains popular with some set of people. I think this is specifically for the Windows VCC, not OVCC. I don't know if the changes he's making can be transferred over to OVCC or not. Hopefully so. That'd be cool.
Yeah, for sure.
Time will tell.
All right, our next news article is actually one that I reviewed last month on Neil's Corner. It's from Chet Simpson, Digger 3, The Saints Ascension. That's his new game that's available for download.
Yeah, I just wanted to give him that little bit of publicity with the link since he was making it available. And, very cool.
Got a nice manual.
Yeah.
Yeah, good write-up, and the game is it's fantastic. Like, I mean, when you're playing it, I mean, it definitely looks Amiga quality.
Digitized sound and stuff. Pretty cool.
It is amazingly high quality. It looks great. It's sizzling hot. Yeah.
Good job, Chet.
Yep.
Okay, our next one is kind of a fun one. This is from Charles Berthoud at YouTube. When music theory goes too far.
This is just a joke, really. It's just for the comic relief. But I saw it, and it reminded me a lot of some being at the end of some criticisms in the past from certain people. I guess you can go a couple of different ways on, how music should sound and at different levels, music for entertainment or music just for games or, whatever. And I definitely fall down on does it sound good? Did you enjoy it? Well, they're good. That's good. But, there are other people who want to say, well, I mean, I can't believe you used a C major progression that when clearly it should have been done in a minor key and, whatever, who the hell cares? What prevails in my mind and hopefully around here is if you like it, then you like it. If it sounds good to you, then it's good enough for everyone else. That sort of thing. I definitely don't want to dissuade anyone from being a creator because what chords are approved in a certain key for whatever they've written their music for. Who cares? Does it sound good? Do you enjoy it? That's what should matter.
That's it. I might not know the technical details, but I know what I like.
Exactly.
All right, our next one is from Mort at YouTube. My tile set workflow, pixel art, and game dev tutorial. And this is a YouTube video where we're just covering exactly what he says, creating tiles. Just shows you how he goes about it, developing tiles for your games or for video and assembling them to make more complex screens.
Yeah, this is one of those that included just, exposure to the idea of, how people can go about creating art for the video games or whatever. And it's not specific to the CoCo at all. It could be applied to the CoCo depending on how you want to write your software and what tools you want to make available to yourself. And I don't know, it's good to at least understand how some of this stuff is done.
Absolutely. All right, we've got one from Chibi Akamas at YouTube. It's Lesson P9, 16-color bitmap drawing on the TRS-80 CoCo 3. And we've been mentioning his videos. These are machine language code videos based, around the 6809 for different platforms. He covers the various different 6809-based systems. In this case, he's zeroing in on the CoCo 3, which, of course, has better graphics capabilities, specifically talking about how to develop 16-color drawings on the CoCo 3.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, it's nice to see some specific attention to the CoCo 3. I don't think there's any great magic here. It's all probably pretty much works about how you'd expect it does, unless, of course, you had no idea what to expect, in which case it ought to be very welcome to have the explanation. But, it's just cool to see the CoCo getting some attention, the CoCo 3 in particular.
Yeah. Thanks for that. Okay, we have one from AC's 8-Bit Zone at YouTube. It's a CoCo 2 repair guide. It's part 1. I don't know how many parts there'll be, but it's a subscriber's CoCo garbled video, TRS-80 color computer video fix. It's about a 25-minute video, and it's good. A subscriber sent in a CoCo that doesn't have video, or it's got garbled video, and he's going to go through the process of tracking down what's wrong with it and repairing it in a series of videos. In this video, he goes over a good kind of a map of all the parts of the CoCo and the reset logic and voltage levels, etc. So it's a good introduction to repair, and I look forward to watching the other parts as he actually finds what the problem is and fixes it.
Another one, the CoCo getting some attention. Happy to plug the link. And
Yes.
Seemed like a decent video.
Very cool.
The next news item is the first public release of the new updated technical reference manual for Nitrous 9 Level 2. Ease of use up to and including features in the upcoming Beta 6 is now available on the Ease of Use documentation page by L. Curtis Boyle. Looks like the folks who are behind the EOU project have posted a set of documentation. Looks like it's on Curtis's website. Lots of manuals. I see several, looks like some release notes, some other documentation, and the technical reference, which is a pretty sizable PDF. I worked on this probably 16, 17 years ago and started it, but looks like they've taken it and ran with it. So looks like there are some things that were missing in some of the early documentation efforts that are now put in. So we now have a group of people that are working on it and keeping on top of it. So that's great.
Yeah, well, like you say, the Nitrous 9 has been actively developed probably longer than the 8-bit, at least OS 9 was in the first place. And so over time, things have drifted away so that the original documentation may not be completely accurate for what it does cover, and it's bound to have things that it doesn't cover anymore.
Right.
And so it's documentation is important on any kind of software project over time, and especially one that's run this long. It's good to see someone putting in the hours to get the documentation and keeping it up to date.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's great. Good stuff.
Good stuff. Yep. The next news item is Pipes for the Tandy Color Computer 1, 2, 3, and Dragon by Nick Marintes. I believe that this is a game that Nick must have released recently. I haven't seen it before. It looks like, it's based on the video, it's a semi-graphics mode game. Is that right, John?
I believe that's correct. It's recently released. He prefers a different venue for most of his public relations, and so I don't have a lot of information. This is what I picked up from the Facebook group. Looks like a cool game. There's some others out there that have a similar twist to them, but basically, like you say, you assemble these pipes so that water can flow, and you have a certain amount of time. There's a timed aspect and assembling the piped aspect. Then the water flows through, and however long it goes, or what kind of paths it takes affects your score. So. Kind of a strategy puzzle game, a little. Yep. It's more puzzle, not really strategy, I guess, because it moves a little bit quick. There's like an arcade element to it, anyway, it looks fun. It's gotten some good reviews, I think. So
yeah, sounds like a good game for plumbers.
Exactly.
Oh, I'm dead. But check out that high score.
How did you do that?
With the Gamester. It's a real arcade joystick with arcade buttons.
Can I try?
Sure.
Wow, this has really got some weight to it.
Yeah, it's made of real wood.
Is this walnut?
Yep. You can choose any wood or finish when you order yours.
It looks great, and this joystick is amazing.
It's smooth, and the buttons are great. You can choose a custom cable length, or even get a left-handed version.
I'm sold. Where do I get mine?
Introducing the Gamester. The Gamester is the ultimate 2-button joystick controller for your color computer, Dragon, and Tandy 1000. The Gamester features a genuine arcade-quality joystick with 2 large arcade-quality cherry switch buttons on a single surface. Every Gamester is built to order. Choose the wood for your cabinet. Choose custom paint or stain and finishes. The Gamester is designed to last a lifetime. To build yours, simply reach out to Neil Blanchard by email. Neil@CoCoCrew.org. That's NEIL@CoCoCrew.org. Experience genuine arcade controller action for all of your favorite color computer, Dragon, and Tandy 1000 computer games. For true arcade action, it's the Gamester.
Next news item. CoCo 3 video poker by CoCo Brothers, Mr. Tim Thayer. This looks like a video of a game that I presume Tim wrote, CoCo 3 video poker, which is pretty cool, actually, when you think about it. Mm-hmm. And more impressive, I think, is Tim, who and his brother Paul are sort of have this friendly rivalry, I think, between Disk Basic or Basic and assembly language programming.
Oh, yeah.
I think Tim wrote this in Basic, which is pretty impressive, if that's the case.
Yeah, pretty cool. And like I say, it looks like good
nice.
work.
Good graphics.
Yeah, good job, Tim. Oh, the next news item is welcome to quadruped spuds. This is going to sound different, as instead of using 4 sine waves, I chose to use 2 square waves, 1 saw and 1 triangle. This must be something from the madman himself, Simon Jonason, some type of an audio exercise on the CoCo.
Well, there's 2 links there, but they're like the first one is an earlier version, and the second one's like a revision. But yeah, this is a new take on the 4 channels mixed into the CoCo deck kind of sound. You know, I mean, it's cool. It's you can get a lot of nifty sound out of that sort of thing, and Simon's thrown in some effort to optimize the performance, I think. And like I said, he's using different kind of waves mixed together. So it sounds like different instruments. So it's essentially what it amounts to.
Good job. This is some good, he's always working on some very interesting cutting edge stuff that no one else tends to take on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
good
sounds
job.
really good.
The next news item is procedurally generated retrocomputer emulators by Matthew Carlson and Hackaday. This is interesting. So it looks like what Matthew is doing is he's defined an XML document that describes the layout of the memory, CPU, and a screen handler to create a JavaScript-based emulator. So I'm presuming that there's some JavaScript engine that reads the XML and emits or behaves. The result is a behavior of a specific CPU.
I think so, or it may even have the CPU as a pre-made module. I'm not exactly sure. I think it works like a compiler where you feed it the XML and it spits something out. Haven't done a huge amount of in-depth detail because, well, it just it had other things to look at. But the main reason this made the list is because they use a dragon as an example. So
that's a very cool idea.
Yeah, I mean, MAME is kind of lends itself to that anyway, I think. Yeah. You know, if you're familiar with the MAME source code and you actually understand all the macros and stuff that they've put into how they build their code, then you can kind of play this Lego block kind of game with building an emulator for something that didn't already exist or didn't already have an emulation. And I've done some of that in the past with MAME on the CoCo emulations to add hardware or whatever. The problem is the MAME guys are like somebody's it's like they had their thesis on how to obfuscate C with the extra macros, or maybe these days it's C++. So how do you obfuscate C++ with an insane number of classes? You know, it's like the project itself almost defines its own language is what it amounts to.
Right.
Anyway, so this is sort of that taken to a different extreme where you define your own language in XML for doing all that plugging and stuff together. So does it help anyone? I don't know. It probably depends on how well you can grasp the XML. But nothing else, this Matthew Carlson has put together at least a Dragon emulator with it. So it could be good for something.
Yeah, certainly even just an academic exercise.
Sure.
The next news item is want disk drives with only a cable, DriveWire 3, up to 4 virtual drives on your CoCo 1, 2, or 3 by 8 Bits in the Basement at YouTube. And this is a gentleman, I think he's from Ireland. He certainly talks like he's from Ireland. But he uses DriveWire on a PC, and he demonstrates how to use HDB-DOS, boots into Nitrous 9 Level 1 on a CoCo 2, using nothing but a CoCo 2, and he uses, I think, a cassette image to bootstrap the CoCo 2 into HDB-DOS. Quite an informative video. It warms my heart to see my software reviewed like that, so thank you.
Yeah, I thought the DriveWire 3 was a nice touch. Aaron brought us DriveWire 4, how long ago now? 10 years ago?
Yeah, I think so.
But I always thought DriveWire 3 worked pretty well for me, and just plain old C seemed to be portable enough. But oddly enough, I think the plain old C that was in DriveWire 3 may actually end up being more portable than the Java code that we got in DriveWire 4.
Well, the DriveWire 3 server he's running under Windows was written in Delphi, which is a Pascal type one.
Oh, well, there you go.
But there is a C version, a text curses version in C of the DriveWire servers up on GitHub that I wrote years and years ago. So, yeah, you're right, certainly. And now, of course, with PyDriveWire, it's portability there even there. But anyway, good job and thank you, 8 Bits in the Basement. The next news item is found something interesting, a project in an old hobbyist electronics magazine called Modern Electronics by Andrew Ayers. He talks about turning a cassette port into a serial port. John, what do you know about this?
Well, so that's kind of true. I mean, it is true in a sense. That's what the project puts together, a little bit of hardware essentially to do like level shifting for RS-232 logic levels, but plugs it in to the cassette port so that theoretically you could be surfing the internet. But surfing CompuServe or something, and then you could print without having to hang up. You know what I mean? You could have your printer attached to this fake serial port that's plugged into your cassette port. And so it's essentially a way to give yourself 2 usable serial ports on your CoCo at the same time. Pretty cool and pretty neat, I think the way it was implemented in the magazine essentially keeps it as a output-only sort of serial port on the... but if you're using it to print, well, that's perfectly fine. And I think probably you could... change the hardware a little bit and be able to do both directions on it, but that's sort of an exercise for the reader, I believe. But anyway, it's kind of cool.
That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, good to see the CoCo represented in a magazine like Modern.
Yeah.
Wow. That's 1986, December of 1986. Very interesting. The next news item is send a tweet with a short program to @Atari 8-Bit Bot or @Apple II Bot, and your program will run on an emulated Atari 8-Bit or Apple II computer by Kay Savitz.
Well, this is a return of the Not a CoCo project, but it could be. So the Kay and Bill have set up, they have a program monitoring Twitter, these Twitter aliases, and when the explanation I've gotten on other podcasts is basically, it takes the input. The Apple II one is all for basic. On the Atari one, I think there's a way that you can specify basic versus, logo or what other action or whatever languages they have plugged in. Anyway, it takes your program and then it spins up, I think, MAME or something, an emulator with a video recording option, builds a disk image or whatever to load your program and run it, and then it'll record, 30 seconds or however much it's set for a video and then send it back to you. So it's like a batch processing for emulated 8-bit computers. In this case, I've got, like I said, Apple II and the Atari 8-bit, but the technology seems like it's not that far off. You could do a CoCo version. Sure. So there's your challenge. Let's say, I'll pick Robert Murphy. So this is your challenge.
It's a good one.
The next news article is from Robert Murphy. What's on your CoCo bucket list? This is a pretty cool one when it came out. Checking it out, I didn't quite know what he meant until I was reading it. These are just all different project ideas, it looks like, that he's compiled.
Yeah. It's a really big list, which is pretty cool. And it's like step one, if you wanted to create what should I do next to my hobby kind of list. There's a list like that exists in the Atari 8-bit world. That it takes it a step beyond that to it kind of hashes out some of the details of how you do some of these projects or how you get started on them or what sort of equipment you need, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. So instead of just a list of 100 items, you'd have 100 single pages that say, 100 paragraphs that say do this and, you need this to get started, that sort of thing. So,
right.
Anyway, it's a good resource. I think we've all at one time or another had a Saturday afternoon where you're sitting, you had nothing else to do, and you're looking at your stack of CoCos, and it's like, that's great. I've got all this cool stuff, but let's see, 10 print, hello, and then 20 go to. It's only so cool, right? So it's good to have some suggestions for what to do on a whim. So. Right.
Yeah. If you're looking for a new project,
cool.
I like how he has it broken down here too. In different categories like communications, community. Even he has a dark side in here. That's kind of funny. Crack a disk, load an X-rated program. That's pretty neat.
Didn't Boise help us with that?
Yeah.
That's right. The strip poker game. Yeah.
That's right.
Right. Yeah.
All right, our next news article is from James Jones on Simpson's Rule, inspired by the Integrate program in TRS-80 color computer programs.
James never fails to give us the intellectual approach on some of the stuff, right? It's a pretty good write-up. Like you said, very learned thought has gone into some of this. Basic code in there, basic 09 code, rather. Looks like it'd be a pretty cool thing to read. So this is inspired by that program we were talking about that, for whatever reason, it ran faster on a CoCo 2 than on a CoCo 3.
Yep.
And so this is some of his investigation of that program and some of the ins and outs of that, I think. So.
Yeah, very cool.
Mm-hmm.
All right, our next news article is from Jim Gary. He is working on a game, Warren's World, The Lost Colony, for the MC-10. This looks like a pretty ambitious conversion here he's doing.
Yeah.
It's a PC game originally.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I don't know that much about the game, but definitely a pretty little color map.
Yeah.
And, pretty complicated map. That's neat.
Yeah. Let's get some working it out here.
I know Jim does some good work, so Should be something cool when it gets done.
Yeah, he's pushing the MC10.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and this last news article for me, this is kind of funny. It's from 88.8 at YouTube. It's a video of a guy finds a Tandy 1000 monitor in the woods. It's a CM5 with vintage moss.
That's no shotgun holes in it.
Yeah, that was surprising.
My goodness.
I assume he just was lucky enough to come across something that had been recently abandoned.
Yeah.
But yeah, kind of neat. I would enjoy just being out somewhere and finding an old computer. That'd be pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. Now, I had something similar like this happen to me. I mean, it actually wasn't abandoned. Well, not in the woods, but it was a complete Tandy 1000 system sitting out in front of someone's house in the trash. It was a Tandy 1000 RL with a CM5 monitor as well. And,
wow.
I was driving down the road and I saw this thing and I said, you know what, I'm going to put the car in reverse, and I just threw it in my trunk, and I still have it to this day. It works well. Awesome. Just had to replace the CMOS battery in it, and that was it.
Yeah, I remember those RLs came out when I was working at Radio Shack, and it was a pretty cool little mini.
Slim.
Yeah.
Yeah. The only thing that's a pain in those things is the battery uses a Dallas chip, so you got to kind of hack the chip now because you can't really find those anymore.
Oh, yeah.
Cut into it and run a new source of power, 5-volt source into it. But once you do that, they're good to go again.
Okay, our next one is from Ed Snyder, and I alluded to this earlier in the show. The new SD cartridge for the MC10, the MCX32 SD, designed by Darren Atkinson, and Ed is producing them, and you can purchase them. I'm sure his stock is going up and down. He ran out for a bit and has some more, so several of us jumped on the bandwagon and got ours ordered. So this plugs into your MC10, gives you another 32K of RAM, so you can actually have some sizable code on it, as well as having the SD card.
So yeah, it's pretty cool. It extends the RAM to 32K or whatever. You get the SD card, you load the cassette images or whatever. Pretty cool. It should be a lot of fun. We'll see who takes it and runs with it. Might be easier than having to carry a cassette recorder, right?
Yeah. The holidays are here again, and for most folks that means sending out cards to your friends and family. It seems that each year the list gets longer and longer. But this year, we're saving loads of time by using the CoCo 3 address file and envelope label addressing from RJF software. It automatically addresses all standard envelopes or prints labels. You can store up to 270 addresses per disk. Each record can hold 8 lines of 64 characters. It's fully menu-driven, and it's easy to add, modify, or delete records. It's perfect for small business mailing, newsletters, client lists, or my favorite use, Christmas cards. All you need is a CoCo 3 with a disk drive and a dot matrix printer. And it's just $14.95 US plus $3 shipping and handling. Ontario residents add 7% provincial sales tax. The CoCo 3 address file and envelope label addressing from RJF Software, White Lake, Ontario.
Since 1994, Cloud9 has made cool stuff for your color computer. Now Cloud9 is proud to announce the 2MB Triad Plus memory expansion board. The Triad Plus works in 2 ways. Purchase just the Triad Plus board to expand your Color Computer 3 from 128K to 512K of RAM. Or add the new Protector Plus MMU to access the full 2 megabytes of static RAM aboard the Triad Plus. And the Protector Plus MMU utilizes full buffering to protect your CPU. Unlike previous 2 megabyte memory expansions for the CoCo 3, the Triad Plus operates seamlessly without the need for special patches, configuration, or workarounds. Games like Donkey Kong Remix and Sierra Adventure games simply work without hassle. And the Triad Plus will reduce your CoCo's power consumption and heat generation. The Triad Plus and Protector Plus MMU, only from the innovative engineering of Cloud9. Cool stuff for your color computer. Visit cloud9tech.com for details.
All right, this next one is from Paul Thayer. The latest CoCo Band vlog. It's a nice video on the game that Paul has been developing and working on. The graphics look great on it. Yeah. Talks about moving some of the shapes around, and be good to see this in action. Sounds like it has lasers. He had them turned off for what he was working with here, but it sounds like the game ultimately has lasers that you direct with mirrors. Sounds like a pretty cool game, and it's coming along nicely. And he's talking about some challenges he's had, so definitely check it out.
Very cool.
And we have another one from Mr. Jim Gary. Save Spock, the battle at Vulcan. Yeah, this is kind of a cool game with a Star Trek theme to it, where you're fighting Klingons that are trying to prevent Spock from getting back to Vulcan. It's looks like a fun game. Got some neat graphics on it.
Yeah,
and sound.
My impression was that there was a CoCo version that he was working from. Sure, I'm not familiar with the CoCo version of the game, but yeah, it was pretty cool. Like I said, glad to see Jim manage to get on the board this time.
Yeah, continuously giving the MC10 love. Thanks, Jim.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, this one is from Chris Wellens, proving on QBasic's random number generator. And this is a pretty cool article. I think what's neat about it is the graphs that he's done in it to show you, how random the random generator is by default in QBasic, which turns out is not super random.
Right.
If you know anything about random number generators, you use a seed to do the calculations to come up with a pseudo-random number. He's got some code here to kind of replace the QBasic random number generator with a better one. Graphing the results, you can clearly see recognizable patterns in the default one, versus this one looks like it's much more of a random pattern.
Closer to white noise.
Yeah. So cool article.
Yeah, I thought it was neat. The QBasic link is like, well, I don't know if Color Basic is using the same algorithm or not. I meant to look that up. I don't know if it's using a similar algorithm. If it is using the same algorithm, I don't know if it's using the same actual numbers, for the multiplication or whatever. So I don't know how far this is off from the Color Basic randomness. I'm assuming Color Basic's randomness is probably no better than default QBasic, but could be wrong, could be surprised. But anyway, it's just kind of cool to see how much, brain power or research can go into this kind of topic, which probably at first glance doesn't seem all that important. But in some cases, it definitely could be important, especially if you're dealing with security or something like that. And granted, you're probably not going to do that a lot with your CoCo, but, maybe. If nothing else, it's educational.
Yeah, I think we should challenge Mr. John Mark Mobley to take this on. Give us the lowdown, compare the two.
Exactly.
On CoCo.
Exactly. Next, really two links here from Mr. Alan Huffman. When he appears on the scene after some period of silence or whatever, he usually will squirt out a stream of basic articles, and he's got a couple of them here, ways to compress data for a basic program. Seems to be locked in on the base 64 algorithm. A couple of articles that seem to go into pretty good depth on the technique and some analysis or whatever. His articles on BASIC are usually pretty good. There's usually some pretty good info there. I haven't dug deep enough to be able to provide, either praise or criticism, to be honest, but it's got some good screenshots. And it seemed like it was a pretty good topic. So at least at first glance. So definitely recommend that you check this out. And again, if nothing else, educational. Whether or not you end up using base 64 for compression in your basic programs, or you just want to understand something better, I think this will be helpful for you. Very cool. Thank you, Alan. Next item. So this is from Matt Chai. We tend to pronounce it Matchy because he kind of uses the word Matchy as a bit of an alias in the various groups. So Matchy, which might be Matchy or Matt Chai, or I don't know. Feel free to write in or correct my bad pronunciation, Matt. Anyway, it says, I made this Doodle Jump clone about a year ago, and you can download it here. Well, straight to the point. Looks pretty cool. So CoCo game done in the buff color set. It's a jumping game. You jump up platforms, almost like the reverse of Farfall. You jump up and bounce off the various platforms or whatever. Well, cool. Anyway, thanks, Matt. It's definitely good to see you in the community working on that. Very cool. Next item is from Sheldon McDonald. did a small update on RS-DOS tool. So he's got a tool for manipulating disk images for RS-DOS. And said, also wanted to showcase my new Simulate graphics drawing tool that I'm working on. So he's got screenshots there of a drawing tool. Looks, fairly standard. You got little palettes to select from and has some patterns available or whatever. So very cool. Nice to see you doing some work in the community and sharing that. Just good to see you having some good time yourself there, Sheldon. So cool, very nice, and thank you. Now this other one, this next one, this link is actually a little bit old, but I wasn't familiar with it. And so it's from Rolf Michelson perhaps. It says Dragon Tools is a collection of tools for working with the Dragon family of 1980s home computers from a Windows environment. Well, it's a simple website, but it's got we can download a zip with the tools in it, and he's got a pointer to the GitHub repository and a few extra links related to the Dragon. It says last modified 2013, so not exactly brand new, but like I said, it was new to me. So if you're looking for ways to manipulate disk images, this supports both DSK and VDK virtual diskette formats. By DSK is probably referring to the JVC format, EIEIO, right? Anyway, if you're looking for a Dragon-oriented alternative to Toolshed, particularly one that runs on Windows, then this might be your saving grace here, Dragon Tools. Very cool. So, back to Robert Murphy. So this month is a bit of taking stock of where I've been, where I am, and where I'm going. I'm not sure what gave him the impression, if there was some specific talk or what, but I think what I gather is that Robert kind of got the feeling that somehow people were a little confused by his blog or what was going on with it, and so he decided to kind of rally, kind of give a refresher on where things are going and why and what he's doing and whatever. So if you've tried to follow, tried to look into Robert's blog and maybe got a little lost or whatever, this entry is for you. It gives you, like I say, an overview on what his purpose was and what he's actually set out to do, what his project is. Some cool discussion. Check it out. Robert's obviously been pretty active in the community for some time now, and I'm sure he'd love to hear from you. All right. Another one from Joel Avey. It compiles. It is a Pascal program for Motorola to translate 6809 assembly code to 68000, going by the name of Trans09. He's got a Pascal compiler running. It's the OS9 68000 Pascal compiler running on the MM1, and he's got a program called Trans09 supposed to translate 6809 assembly language code to 68000 assembly language code, which is bound to have some few tricks to it. And so he's working through some Turbo Pascal era source code, trying to get it to compile under the OS9 68K Pascal compiler. I've seen, I think he's got it working by now. I think I saw a post today. And now to the point of wanting to test it out a bit more. Anyway, kind of cool is he's doing some work with the MM1, trying to bridge the gap from the CoCo to the MM1, and using a retro language, retro compiler to do it. Very retro project. Very cool.
Yeah, I'd like to see more MM1 video or something on YouTube. Come on, guys.
Yeah.
A lot of us couldn't get one, so we're interested in it.
Yeah, definitely. All right, let's see. This one, here's one from Jim Gary, savior of the MC10. Key debounce delay pokes. This is a blog entry. Let's see. It says Greg Dion's been working on a TRS-80 basic compiler. He's got a lot of information here related to doing key debounce on the MC10. Debounce, of course, is bounce is a physical property of electrical switches, where they're physically, as you close the switch, including the switch on the keyboard, you'll get a essentially imperceptible to humans, but a bounce, an actual physical deflection of the components that will cause potentially multiple contacts even though you really only intend the one flip the switch contact. You'll actually get several in a very short period of time. And in some cases, those can read as multiple key presses, and that's usually undesirable. He's got a write-up of some of the debounce issues on the MC10. Looks like some good information. If you're interested in programming the MC10 and using a keyboard, sounds like it'd be some good reading. So our final news item, retail entrepreneurs buy twice bankrupt Radio Shack with plans for online revival. Radio Shack has changed hands again. We've got somebody who wants to revitalize it as an online seller, which is essentially what they've been doing anyway. I don't know. It sounds like this group of entrepreneurs have been scooping up a number of brands that have seen better days. I think they're hoping to be able to mine some gold out of their collection. Hopefully Radio Shack will be one of the nuggets that falls out. So hopefully they'll do so well they'll be opening retail locations all around the country. Wouldn't that be cool?
And bring it back to Canada.
Intertan, right, Neil?
Yeah.
That's it, yeah.
Very cool. Well, technically this is Radio Shack, not Tandy. So,
Yeah.
Anyway, maybe they'll could have come back. Maybe they won't. Who knows? But we can always hope for the best, right?
I just want the battery club back.
I've got my card, man. I need to get some batteries off that card.
Right. They left me hanging.
Yeah, I got to get a couple more punches. All right, man. Well, that is our news for this month. So thank you for listening so far. If you'd care to be entertained a little bit more by the CoCo Crew, then hang on. We've got a little bit more in the show, or maybe more than a little bit more of the show. So just hang on. We'll be back in a minute with some feedback.
This month in CoCo history.
Welcome to This Month in CoCo History, where we explore events in the life of our favorite home computer. I'm Boise Pete, and this month we go back 37 years to the November 1983 issue of Color Computer magazine and an ad for a unique piece of CoCo hardware. Page 44 featured an advertisement by Waxhaw Woodcraft of Green Lane, Pennsylvania. This wasn't a new CoCo game or groundbreaking peripheral, but a customized wood cabinet, custom-made for the color computer. A lone picture shows a gray CoCo 1 with cassette recorder resting on a pull-out shelf, with a color television atop, and a printer on a lower shelf with two storage drawers underneath. With a height of 34 inches, a width of 31.5 inches, and a depth of 20 inches, the cabinet had a compact, narrow look, with just enough room to get work done. The TV computer combo came in a dark or unfinished look and required minor assembly, and you could have it delivered to your door for $248 plus UPS shipping and handling. A unique piece of furniture for a very unique computer.
And that's this month in CoCo history.
Do you struggle trying to remember how to check your multi-pack interface to see if its PAL has been updated for the CoCo 3? Looking through documentation is time-consuming. List archives and search engines require so much typing and are just too complicated. And even if you find the correct pokes and peaks, you'll never write them down or remember them. But now there's the MPI tester from Romco. Just connect the MPI tester to any model of multipack. Power on the multipack and simply check the color of the status LED on the MPI tester. Blue means the MPI is unmodified. Green means the MPI has been upgraded for the Color Computer 3. Best of all, the MPI tester never requires batteries. It's perfect for home, camper, boat, and RVs. Get the MPI tester from Romco, a great Christmas gift for only $7.77.
Available at Walgreens, Shoppers Drug Mart, Woolco Woolworth, Family Drug Centers, Osco Drug, Canadian Tire, McDonald's, Piggly Wiggly, Montgomery Ward, Sears Roebuck, Village Pantry, Burger King, Sandy's, Duane Reade, Kate Spade, The Church of Scientology, Five Guys, Baby Gap, Swizzles, 7-Eleven, Albertsons, participating Exxon stations, Beauregard's, Mama's Fried Chicken, ABC Liquors, Moon Pie General Stores, Whole Foods, Taco John's, Sherwin-Williams, and Goldblatt's.
All right, CoCo Cruisers. Now it's time for feedback. Our first bit of feedback comes from the indomitable Mr. Jim Gary. His feedback starts off a little questionable, right? He says, not enough Jim Gary in your last episode. You missed, he sends us a couple of YouTube links, and we'll have those links available in the show notes so you can check them out. And he said, and you missed the bell on your last post about me. Seriously, though, good show. Nice to hear folks are visiting the Hallabag in Trenton. Thanks for the coverage, Jim Gary. So the Hallabag, I guess, is the Canadian Air Force Museum. Is that that you guys mentioned?
That's right.
Right.
Yes,
very cool.
Yes.
Everyone, check out the YouTube links from that Jim reminded us of, and definitely good to hear from Jim. So he's one of the staples of our show, as anyone who listens probably knows. All right, let's see. We've got another one. We got one here from Robert Murphy. Kind of connects back to the last link we mentioned in the news from him. I'm hoping my next blog update to AX2 Nostromo will really make it clear what I've been doing and where I am versus where it's going. So, so just for the record, I almost left that one off. We're going to hit it next month, but then I saw the feedback and said, well, we'll get that one in. So there's your lesson. If you've got a link and you think it's important to get out there, then be sure to include some feedback for the show, and it's a good way to get your link included in the current month. So thank you, Robert. Good to have you listening, and hope that's helpful to get your info out about your blog. All right, so we mentioned at the top of the show that we've documented now 150,000 downloads of the show since we've been at Cyber Years. And so we got a couple of congratulations. So we got congrats. May you have 150,000 more of good times. That's from Chris Lucky. Let's see, Chris Lucky. Now that's Sloopy, right? In the Atari world there. I think so. And anyway, Chris is a nice guy. So thank you, Chris, for listening or at least commenting on the Facebook group. Very cool to hear from you. Also commenting on the 150,000 downloads. Wow, very nice. Congratulations and keep them coming. And this comes from Mr. Paulo Garcia. So thank you, Paulo. Good to hear from you. All right, we had in response to our listener question of the month last month, which was, what is your preferred CoCo game controller? Let's see, the first response we got, I only use the original analog hockey pucks. It's a big part of the color computer experience for me. Of course, that's from Peter Satinsky. Peter is, of course, the host of the Irritated Trash Talk podcast. And both Neil and I zinged him a little bit on that one about, I think Neil said, no wonder you only like the Z80s. So anyway, good to hear from Peter. Thank you for the feedback. Let's see. This one comes from David Croker, Kroeker, Croker. David, if I'm mispronouncing your name, it's not intentional. Feel free to send some feedback correcting me. Anyway, he says, Gravis analog joystick is my go-to controller on the CoCo. It has nice arcade-style buttons, which can each be configured independently as button 1 or 2. It also has self-centering and free-floating modes. My second favorite is the deluxe joystick, as it was my favorite as a teenager. So, well, there you go. I think that sounds like good recommendations. Some flexibility and configuration, and a cool way to experience the CoCo. Like I say, I really like the self-centering. I personally prefer the deluxe joystick. Well, actually, I kind of like the joypads with the neo-notch converters as well. But as far as the original set of controllers, the deluxe joystick is my favorite. I like to be able to let my thumb up and it recenters. I just never could really get a good centering with the the original, the Black Beauty style joysticks. Some people love those for whatever reason, but it always felt sloppy to me. Anyway, one more from David Ladd. Depends on the game. In most cases, I prefer the deluxe joystick, 2 buttons, which is a good point there. There were both 2-button and single-button versions of the deluxe joystick. Anyway, I prefer the deluxe joystick, 2 buttons, than the original black joysticks. So, anyway, people point out, the like Polaris or double back. It's good to have the floppy analog sticks. They kind of stay where you want them a little bit more, but I always preferred the arcade style games a bit more, so it's nice to have something that was self-centered. But, maybe that's just me. All right, well, moving on. So for the listener question, that was our response to last month's listener question of the month. This month's listener question of the month, what else should we be covering? So some examples I've got is should we be covering other podcasts, CoCo or otherwise, news on, say, Retro Computing Roundtable or TRS-80 Trash Talk, something like that. Something else, should we be covering more Dragon, more MC10? I don't know what else we might put in there. We could cover more of the Brazilian CoCo clone scene. I don't know, whatever you think would be important. Here's one, the month-by-month magazine retrospectives. So some other podcasts do those where they'll pick a magazine, like, say, Creative Computing, and then every month they'll just say, well, whatever that must say, it's April. So, well, the April 1982 edition of Creative Computing, we have these stories available and, whatever. So we could do something like that, Rainbow or Color Computer Magazine or something like that. I don't know. What do you think? Would you be interested in that? We thought these were important parts of the show. Well, of course, we'd already be doing them, but if you think there'd be important parts to add to the show, we certainly like to have that perspective and take it under advisement. So let us know. What else should we be covering as part of the CoCo news and information? All right. Well, I think that brings us to the end of this month's feedback. So why don't we take another little break, and then we'll be back with the rest of the show.
I wanted to go to CoCo Fest, but honey, I can't go. Lord knows I want to. Chicago, Atlanta, Wall, Springfield, or Mountain View. Alright. I just know there's got to be a computer show to give me something to do. Lord have mercy. I broke down and I cried when I got the news, yes I did. You left me flat with just these holes in my shoes. And now I'm down in the dirt all by myself with the Retro Fest blues.
All right, CoCo Cruisers, welcome back to, to somebody's favorite part of the show. We're going to have a little host discussion with me and the other hosts. And our topic this month, we're going to talk about how to deal with deadbeat sellers. So as opposed to a deadbeat buyer where, you like sell something like maybe on eBay and then they just never pay, there's sort of the opposite, is where maybe you arrange to buy something, maybe you pay in advance, or maybe even if you don't pay, but you're agreed to it and somehow go out of your way to fulfill the arrangement, and the seller doesn't show or doesn't provide what was promised. That's where we're going. So how to deal with deadbeat sellers. And I'll say that I haven't had that many of these occasions to deal with. There have been a couple, I guess. The most recent one is actually I arranged to buy an item from someone that was new to the community. I didn't know the person, but they said they were coming to CoCo Fest, and it was an interesting item at a reasonable price. Perhaps foolishly, I went ahead and paid them for the item. I think it was at their request, but one way or another, I went ahead and paid for the item. And of course, CoCo Fest this year didn't happen, right? And when it became clear that it was at least not happening, when it became clear it wasn't happening, I inquired about a refund. That person responded responded at the time, well, with all the COVID stuff happening, all the shutdowns or whatever, we just don't have the money right now. Can you wait until the end of the month or whatever? So I said, okay, fine, I understand. Then didn't hear back from them. And then got to the end of the month and I said, hey, the end of the month was past the end of the month. I mean, it was more like 6 or 8 weeks. And it's like, we got the money. Got no response at all. And then waited another period of time, a month or two. Looked and they've deleted their account. Well, no, I thought they deleted their account, but it turned out that their account still existed, just they had blocked me.
Oh, wow.
So now it's one thing to not respond or to play like to play wimpy with I'll gladly pay you Thursday for the hamburger today or whatever. But this seems a little wrong to be blocked when somebody's just asking for a refund for something you just never delivered. Now, that's a deadbeat seller. Unfortunately, how do you deal with that? Well, I've got nothing. At this point, I'm just out my $100 or whatever. So hopefully you guys have some stories that are more informative or more helpful than that. I've got one more story, but I'll I'll hold on to that one until I hear what you guys have to say. So who's got a story?
I think by and large, most people, in the CoCo community are honest and upright, and we haven't had a lot of issues. Most of the time, things go well. But,
I agree.
But when they go bad, little recourse, I guess you can do with it. It's like somebody who owes you money, right? You can't force them to pay you, and berating them and dragging their name through the mud isn't going to get you anything either.
Yeah.
Yeah,
well, the best you can do is try to keep in touch and keep it in their mind. But it's a tough spot.
Yeah, there was one time. The only other time I really remember having a problem. I agreed to buy, let's just say, some stuff, CoCo stuff. Had some rarity, shall we say. I guess I'm just a sucker. I think I paid for that in advance too, but I guess I'm used to that with it buying off of eBay, right? But this wasn't an eBay buy. Bought something, waited for it, and waited for it, and waited for it, and kind of same thing. Wait a while, and then start reaching out saying, "Hey, have you sent that?" And do that a couple of times, and then no replies, kind of thing. And I think in that case, I actually went to the group and said, hey, has anybody heard from so-and-so? Because they sold me something and took the payment, and I haven't got the item, and anybody know where it's up with them? And eventually that was loud enough, I guess, that then they contacted me and said, oh, yeah, I'm sorry, in a divorce or, something. And But I eventually got my items in that case. So I guess that's one thing you can do. Depending on the situation, is maybe you can exert some social pressure if it's somebody that actually wants to be part of the group in good standing and has just made a mistake or something like that. And of course, you feel bad about that. On the other hand, if they just sort of were in a bad situation or mistake and you outed them, then it's almost like you're the bad guy. Now, if you're on eBay or something and you get you sent your payment and you didn't get your item, well, you just report them to eBay and let them let the eBay hounds go after them.
Right.
Yeah, you do get some protection with that, and that's a good point. Some people complain that things are expensive on eBay, but you are getting some protection to prevent that from happening.
Indeed.
I've been in the CoCo community a long time, and I can't think offhand of a time where I ordered something from anybody and got stiffed or they didn't send it. I've heard stories, right? There was the whole Stephen Disney debacle that happened years ago with the 6309s and I think a magazine. I wasn't involved in that, but that was kind of a big deal back then, and it still comes up every now and then in the CoCo community. This is a credit to the folks, I think, in the community that I deal with, is that I haven't been in a situation where I've paid for something and then had to hound somebody to get it. It just never happened to me.
I've had really good luck, too, in the CoCo community and in other retro communities as well. Most people, the only thing I've ever had a problem with is I ordered a couple Dragon cassette games off a website, and they never did show up, so I don't know what happened there. But, that wasn't really that expensive, so I wasn't really, too concerned. It was just a little disappointing. But other than that, everybody I've dealt with has just been, really nice, and the stuff I've ordered, the products come through. So it's a nice community.
Yeah, I think, John, what you experienced here recently with that, very much an outlier. It's unfortunate. I presume that person is probably not a well-known member of the CoCo community.
No.
Because anyone with a reputation in the community would not risk that reputation by stiffing someone for $100. So, but to avoid it, I don't know. I guess somebody's got to act first, right? Either you have to pay them or they have to send you the product. So there's a trust factor that has to happen. There's usually not a someone handling it in escrow, right?
Right.
So, eBay or PayPal actually can act to that in a certain degree, I guess. But you would think in a small community like ours that these things probably wouldn't happen, especially with the ability to name and shame.
Yeah, you would think that would be enough to dissuade people, especially cheating somebody who has a podcast.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
a good thing to do.
Yeah, no doubt. But, quite a platform, right?
Apparently not. Apparently, some will play you and say, "Well, dare you to be the bad guy." And in this case, I guess I'm not taking the bait on that one to my own detriment. Yeah, I don't know. And maybe, like you said, maybe they really have a problem, a personal issue or whatever, bigger issues to deal with. I understand most of that, but I don't understand the blocking me.
Yeah.
It'd be one thing if I was knocking on the door every day saying, "Hey, you got my money. Hey, you got my money." But right, literally, I sent them, like say, one thing, after CoCo Fest was canceled, and another thing a couple of months later, and then I got no other contact, and I found out they blocked me. So I definitely wasn't harassing them. So I'll be fine. I can take the hit on the money. I don't think I should have to, but I can survive.
It's the principle of it, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And if that person ever surfaces back up again, you have every right, in my opinion, to bring it up and to call them out on it. But that's up to you how you handle that. But you certainly have the right to do that. I guess the bottom line is don't be a deadbeat.
Well, don't be a deadbeat. Sure.
Right.
It's bad for the whole community. It makes the whole community look bad, especially There's always people that just assume however they got dealt with the first time they dealt with the community, if it went bad, they assume the whole community is that way. That's not fair either, but it happens.
Right.
Well, I mean, I guess there's no real good answer then. How do you deal with a deadbeat seller? At some point, maybe you can name and shame them a little bit. My own personal warning there, if you do name and shame somebody, there will be people that think you're the bad guy, I promise.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yes.
So no matter what, whether they offer an excuse or not, you'll still be the bad guy. You don't know their story, that sort of thing.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, their need is a claim on your funds. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I disagree with that, of course, vehemently, but...
Absolutely.
Probably the best thing is to stick to protected buying practices, stick to buying on eBay or something similar.
Yeah.
And if they don't come through, then you just have to pursue it through the seller, through the financial people, PayPal or whatever. Don't feel bad about doing that either. Just don't be a jerk about it. That's all. Well, like I say, that's the only thing I can offer. If you want to be nice to someone and try to do a side deal to make sure they get the maximum profit or whatever, just be aware that their maximum profit might be just not delivering the item to you. So that's not so nice. But hopefully that's not happening very much. Like I say, my experience in general is not that has happened very much at all. But in this case, it happened to me. There you go.
Unfortunately, all the remedies are illegal.
Yeah.
That's probably true. Yep. At least all the abuse ones. All right. Well, I guess we probably beat this one long enough. So why don't we go ahead and end this discussion and move on with the rest of the show.
When you can do a common thing in an uncommon way, you will command the world. Colorware has created the ultimate creativity tool for the Radio Shack color computer. Introducing the CoCo Max system. CoCo Max brings a cutting-edge point-and-click interface with the most powerful graphics editor ever available for the color computer. Point and click. All the sophistication and power of much larger systems. Sophistication. Icons, pull-down menus, font styles, full graphics editing with color and pattern tools. You can brush spray or fill any color, shading, or pattern. Color tools. Use rubber band lines and shapes. Shape tools. Use pencil and eraser tools. Calligraphy tools. Complete control. Use a full set of selection, copy, and paste tools. Copy and paste. Special effects like trace edges, flip, and invert. Special effects. Make a mistake? Simply click undo. Undo. Fat Bits mode lets you zoom to the pixel level for the ultimate precise graphic control. Precise. And the key to CoCo Max is the CoCo Max High-Res Input Unit, a pack that plugs into the color computer expansion interface or multipack. High-Res. Simply plug in a standard joystick, mouse, or trackpad to the input unit, and you now have a joystick resolution of 49,152 points, providing unparalleled pointing precision. Pointing precision. CoCo Max will work on any 64K extended or non-extended color computer. It includes the CoCo Max High-Res Input Unit and a complete user manual. It's available on cassette tape or disc for just $69.95. Get CoCo Max and see your CoCo perform as it never has before. CoCo Max. If you don't agree that CoCo Max is the ultimate creative tool for the color computer, simply return within 20 days for a full courteous refund. The CoCo Max system from Colorware, New Haven, New York. Does your color computer know what time it is? Well, now it can with the RTC10 real-time clock. The RTC10 is a quartz-based time-date clock contained in a compact ROM case. The included 2-year-plus replaceable battery keeps time accurate when the computer is off and even when the cartridge is unplugged. It can be used with or without a multi-slot unit. The included software allows you to set the clock as well as display time and date in the upper right corner of the video screen. The RTC10 makes it simple to access the time and date with just a few basic peaks. It's compatible with any 16K or greater extended or non-extended color computer. The RTC10 comes completely assembled, tested, and ready to plug in and use. The RTC10 real-time clock. Only $89 from Custom Computer Products. Goshen, New York.
All right, welcome, CoCo Cruisers. This is this month's interview segment. So we've got a bit of a treat, kind of a celebrity of sorts from back in the day. A man known as Joe Scinta. And if that name is not familiar, probably you'd be familiar with the company that he was responsible for, which appears to still be a running concern, Kenton Electronics. And Joe, of course, brought us a lot of cool products back in the day, had a lot of cool experiences, and, I hope he's got some good stories to tell. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Joe. Hello, Joe. How are you?
Hey guys, how are you doing?
Cool. And of course, we're joined, this is John Linville, and we're joined by, of course, Mr. Neil Blanchard. Hello, Neil.
Hello, John and Joe.
Mike Rowan. Hello, Mike.
Hello, welcome, Joe.
And, of course, Mr. Boise Pete. Hello, Boise.
Hey, guys. Welcome, Joe. Good to see you after all these years.
Yeah, it's good to see you, Boise.
Very cool, very cool. So, Joe, why don't you just start and give us a little overview of, a little overview on yourself and how you got started in electronics and how you got involved with the CoCo, and we'll just go from there.
Well, it kind of all started in the Air Force. I was in college and went in the Air Force, got into the self-pacing thing for electronics in Biloxi, Mississippi. That was a lot of fun. I got to teach a little bit of electronics because I got it done quick enough. I had already had most of that stuff in school, so it was kind of easy. I did get to meet some really great guys, super engineers. They turned out to be fabulous people that's done some great stuff. So that's where it basically started. And then when I got out, I worked at some TTL cash registers. They were the first electronic cash register. They were made up in Maynard, Massachusetts. I basically ended up vice president of that company down there. It was Bay Business Machines in Tampa. Had a great time down there. Great people to work with. John Posey was the owner, and me and him were a great team. We had a whole team of people. And that gave me a lot of experience with the TTL chips, because in the Air Force, they didn't have the TTL chips yet. It was kind of like 10 years behind. So I got involved with a little bit of TTL chips. I got to work with some analog chips. It kind of got me going because I needed that information so that I could work at the job I really wanted, which is I wanted to be a senior engineer at Sierra Research, very, very high paying, which I didn't really care about, but it was the place to work because it was so much great stuff being made there at Sierra Research for the government, for commercial use. It was just all the people from Bell Aerosystems that moved over there, and I just wanted to work there. So I had originally gone there before I was in the service. They told me what I needed to be a senior engineer, and I said, well, I'll come back when I get all that stuff. So I needed it, and I needed the tech training, and I needed to have that years of experience in the field, and then I had to do some design. And when I went in there, I got hired as a senior engineer, probably one of the youngest, and I was livid about it. And that's when I started the CoCo Club, was when I was working at Sierra. And I actually used the CoCo to do a job, to do the epicenter charts for the flyover simulations, where the aircraft would fly over an airport and actually calibrate all of the ground equipment to make sure it was all working, which was a fantastic job and a fantastic thing for that little CoCo to do. So I got pretty good into the guts of this thing, and I started the CoCo Club, and sure enough, we ended up with like 350 members in Erie County. We basically used to just throw a couple bucks in every week. We'd meet, and then we'd buy stuff, the books, and then we'd library them out, and whatever new things that were out, whatever the memory chip things. We had the add-ons and all these different boards and games and programs and stuff. So we had a big library, and they could check the stuff out as long as they brought it back. So you didn't have to be paying thousands of dollars for the stuff. And then we found out that these darn hard drives were only 5 megs. And they were like $1,500. It was something, some ridiculous amount of money. I don't know. I don't know what Tandy was selling them for. But they were so incredibly expensive that they said, we could just build this and sell this a lot cheaper. And we don't have to stick with 5 meg drives. We can go 10 megs, 20 megs, 40 megs, One of the group members was Roger Krupski, great programmer. He wrote the program he was real good with the assembly language. I knew some assembler. I did write some assembler, but I was better with the higher level languages. And he wrote all the coding to talk to the Kenton controller for the hard drive. And I designed it. He did help a little bit, because he told me what he wanted to see as far as coming into the PIA when we plugged the cartridge in. But we designed all that, laid it out, did it, and boom. It was a 90 megahertz interface chip, so, the sky was the limit. It was however fast the CoCo could go, which was about 1 megahertz. So we were doing 1 megabyte transfers. And that was it. We put that 16-bit chip in there, and it was kind of nice because we just load D, and that, the D register and that CoCo at 6809 was so cool because it concatenated A and B with a single clock cycle. So it was very fast. And we were doing things on that CoCo that the PCs were not even near, because it was just that was still an 8-bit processor at the time. It was a cool machine. We had a blast with that. And then we needed a real COM port. You know, we didn't have any kind of communications like RS-232 or 485 or any of that. So we made the dual COM board, plugged that in, and that gave us 2 ports. And then we, Roger wrote the OS9 drivers. All of this stuff, of which, I bought after I bought the RGB DOS off him, and I paid him for it. And I paid him for the OS9 drivers, just so that there was no problems later on. I guess we're friends still to this day. I haven't talked to him in years because we really haven't done much with the CoCo. There's no reason for it. I wish the kids would learn the CoCo and not just, stick an iPhone on a car and then run the app to drive it or whatever. They don't really get into the bits and bytes of how this stuff works. And I guess it's okay, but it's just, I would like to see them at the level we were at, playing a little bit with assembler, playing right, at machine code level, maybe working with BASIC or Fortran or C or C++ now, C++, just something so that they could actually talk to the computer in its own language.
Mm-hmm.
It was so important that we would do that. And it was complicated, and it did need some guys that knew this stuff to be able to teach these other guys that were just...
Joe, I have a question. Kind of going back to your time in Florida, that program that you wrote for the color computer to do the to work with the air traffic, did you write that in BASIC?
That was all.
And how did it emerge? And did you use that, or did other people use the program as well?
That was written all in BASIC. I wrote it all in BASIC. I did have to get some graphics symbols that we got from a government contract that the government contracted somebody at one time. And I got this mag tape in, and I had to put the mag tape on the reel. We had to write a Fortran something or other to read these graphic symbols off, because as you were flying over, these symbols had to move on the screen, And keep in mind, this was just a simulation for a $7.5 million job, which now would be probably a $70 million job.
Sure.
And we did get the job, and it passed the test. We sold the system, but it was all predicated on that simulation that we did, with the simulator. We didn't have that. I think they were just impressed more with that than anything else, that we could just pop that simulator. You got to show them what it was going to do.
Right.
How it was going to come up on the screen, and how the plane flying over could see the actual VORs and symbols on the ground moving as you're flying the plane. It was a simulation I made, but it was enough that they would get an idea of how it would look, because they didn't have any of these TV screens in the cockpits at the time. This is all new stuff.
Was this in the early 80s, I take it? Like 81, 82?
Yeah. This would be 80. Yeah. This would be 82 to 85, something like that, right in that area. Maybe 86 by the time we finished the project. And we finished it pretty quickly. And I worked there until some Texas firm bought them, and there were some financial engineers, and then they decided to get rid of all the engineers and just make submarine cables. We all kind of bailed and did our own thing. And that's when I started Kenton. I had already had Kenton for 2 years before I left Sierra. I always had the company a couple of years beforehand. Didn't do any business with it. I just had it. I was doing little odd jobs on it, But by the time I left Sierra, I had a lot of outside jobs. I had so many outside jobs. I was taking 110 days off a year from Sierra, like the last year I worked there. Wow. So I was only working there like half the time. And they didn't care. They didn't care. Nice. I know. They didn't care that I took all that time off. They still paid me. They were nuts.
So, Kenton, what's the origin of that name?
Well, Kenmore Tonawanda. There's Kenton everything here.
Oh.
There's Kenton Motors.
Well, that makes sense.
Interesting. Kenmore Tonawanda. Cool.
I was just curious when the SCSI controller became available for sale to the public.
I think it was early 80s. We made that. It was in the 80s. It was not 90s. This was in the 80s when we did this, because that's when the CoCo was big. Mm-hmm. I didn't use a PC in my company until into the 90s, because we were doing all the spreadsheets and stuff on the CoCo for the business.
You were actually using the CoCo in your business?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We ran... I wish I could name the program. It was a great program. It was sort of like a spreadsheet program, and it was real good.
Was it under OS9 or was it under?
Yeah, it was under OS9 and
Dynacalc.
It might have been Dynacalc, one of those. But in any event, I remember the tax people coming to see me, and New York State Tax came. We had designed a digital sign. In fact, this digital sign we did $1 million contract with this digital sign. And it never came to fruition because they couldn't install them because the judges says it was moving, even though it wasn't moving. It was like a Times Square sign. You know, it was a digital moving sign. Nobody had these yet. So we made these signs, and we had some deposit checks. Well, New York State Tax comes in and goes, you know, what's all this money you got here? We want to know what you did. Or did you actually get this check? You know, or did that company just say they gave you that check? And did you pay taxes on that check? Did you declare it? And I says, well, why don't you sit down over here? We'll pull it up on the computer. He goes, oh, really?
Wow.
Nice. Yeah, here's the
Good
check.
luck.
You got the $15,000 over here. There's deposited here. You can check that with the bank. That went in there. And this, you know, I'm going through the whole checkbook with him on the computer, on the CoCo.
Wow.
And it wasn't until the 90s when we really had to just stop writing our software and just buying the canned packages. I just think we got too busy.
If you look in the chat window here, and you're going to see some links to some Rainbow magazines, and one of them shows a picture of you, Joe, at the Rainbow Fest in 1989 at Chicago, I believe.
Oh, yeah, I did go to Chicago. What's Chicago?
You should.
Pennsylvania? Yeah, there it is. You know, there were some pretty ominous people there, you know. Yeah, there's the mustache.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's right. In the March 1989 issue of the Rainbow, for Kinton Electronics, you were selling hard drive packages at that time.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Yeah, we used to get the back page or something.
I love it says real SCSI interface and dual RS-232 pack.
Well, it was real. It didn't matter what size the drive was. You know, we did actually OS9 drivers. They, you know, OS9 drivers are so cool because, you know, all the I/O follows a standard. And in OS9, you know, I couldn't understand. I go, Roger, why is there an input routine for the screen? The screen can't input in, and you just output to the screen. He says, well, you got to put it in there because they all got to be there. And then, of course, they come up with the mouse. And then they wanted to read the cursor of the mouse off or the touch screen. And then they did want input off the screen. So that was the kind of thing that made me actually realize that there's an operating system and then there's junk. And OS9 was kind of cool, too, where they shared their modules.
Yep.
When you get a PC, every time you get the same module, 10 programs use the same module, don't matter. You got 10 copies running. Very stupid.
Right.
I mean, it was just junk like that that just turned me off from the PC so bad that I did not want to get in depth like I did on the CoCo.
Wow.
We also made the Schmodem. I don't know if you remember the Schmodem.
No.
There was no modems out. There was a 300 baud modem out. So we made what we called a Schmodem, which was the Scinta modem, okay? What it did, it used the cassette port. And it basically was a telephone line interface with just two transformers. You know, we made a Balin, and we made it do the bidirectional thing with the two transformers, like Alexander Graham Bell did when he did the telephone to get two-way conversation over two wires. You know, we simulated that circuit with two transformers. That's all it was. You throw it in the cassette port. You poked it into high speed, and that puppy would send at 1500 baud. And it would receive very well at 1500 baud over the phone line.
Did you sell this as a product?
I don't remember. I know we made some. I don't know where they went. We might have given them away. They were so very simple. They were very simple.
Wow.
It was a center tip transformer on one side and a regular on the other. I just loved it because I thought it was so cool because, you know, the telephone is such a cool device when he made it.
Right.
He was talking two directions on two wires. Come on. Think about that.
Yeah.
I mean, are you freaking kidding me? The guy was not a physicist. I mean, he just figured that all out. I thought that was amazing. So I made a bunch of stuff for the CoCo. We just love that. We did a underground digging thing. The underground digging, all in New York State used to use CoCos with a printer attached and my dual COM board and a modem, I guess, of some kind, and then they would send out all the information to the different utilities for digging.
Oh, for like 411 kind of stuff?
Yeah, it was just a commercial thing we did. We did a company. It was a whole company we did. And then we weren't big enough, so they did this one call thing. And then one call went to PCs, and, you know, they didn't need a specific machine that would talk right to the PCs. And it made sense that we shouldn't be doing that anymore. But we used the CoCo for a lot of cool stuff. I mean, that was a cool little processor. It was very fast for its time.
I remember my first hard drive interface was yours. I bought it from you, Joe, I think in 1989. I paid $600. It was the Kinton SCSI interface with a ST157N Seagate SCSI hard drive. I think it was 40 meg.
Right, 40 megs. And the 5 megs were going at like 1,500, so we were like half the price.
Yeah, by 1989, you were taking advantage of the bigger hard drives then. RGB DOS was the software that Roger wrote, right?
Yes, he wrote that software. Yeah. And I helped him a little bit with the commands and the basic, you know, how to work with it. You know, we worked together kind of on it, but that was like his thing. And the controller was like my thing.
Yep.
And then I felt like I should pay him for it because I was selling it and he didn't want anything for it. I go, here, I'll pay you. I'm going to pay you for RGB DOS.
Nice.
And then paid him for the OS9 drivers, and because he worked hard on it.
When you paired RGB DOS and the capabilities that it had, the ability to partition out, have these virtual disks, and then some of those could be OS9, and booting into OS9 the way that was done, it was marvelous. I mean, it was a great system. And
well, the thing is,
we
were doing a megabyte because we had done that little binary code to talk specifically to this registered latch that was designed specifically for this thing. And it was a very hard chip to find. We only could get the military version. It was one of the things that did drive the thing up. It was ceramic, and it was very hard to get, but it was the chip. Because all you did...
Yeah, it had a lot of pins on it, I recall. Wasn't it a Philips or a chip or something? Or?
Well, no, it was I don't remember. I probably was Motorola. I probably have some upstairs in the lab.
It was like a 674HC600 series something chip. I'm just vaguely recalling.
735 something. I don't know. I could find out. I mean, it's a great chip to play with, but it was a little complicated. But the beauty of it was there was 5 control pins on there, and all we had to do was put that code on those pins, and it would do it. So we didn't have to wait, and it was a 90 megahertz chip. I don't think anybody thought of that seriously to be able to get that kind of throughput. And believe me, if the CoCo could do 90 megahertz on that bus, we would be doing 90 megabyte.
Yeah,
anyway,
it was a screamer. It was a screamer.
Yeah, 1 megabyte per second was. We were at 5-minute megs online. That was the fastest you could go. It's get 1 megabyte took you 5 minutes. Remember, in a modem. We normally support our devices for 10 years. That goes for anything even that we make today. I mean, we guarantee our stuff for 10 years. Unless it's customer damage. Well, we come from Sierra. It's all military stuff. That's where we learn how to make stuff that just works. Right now we make all of the packs worldwide for Lasertron. If you see a Lasertron in your state or in your city, we made those right here in Tonawanda. All the packs, the phasers, all the stuff, the lighting, controllers, everything that hooks into that computer, all the communication boards, the dual sound cards. We're running optical, digital. We run digital audio to all the speakers, and there's tons of speakers out there now. They're doing Fortnite and King of the Hill. They're doing all kinds of stuff with that Lasertron now.
I'm at the Lasertron website right now.
Yeah, it's we've made those since 1990. We picked up Lasertron right after we did the Kenton controller. It's kind of a funny story how that worked out. I mean, Lasertron was over here. The main office was a couple blocks from my house. Had a big sign. It said, "The world's ultimate game." So I went inside to go play the game. And he had 35 packs in there, and he couldn't get 2 packs working. And it turned out this is one of the owners of the place was working on it with a solder. And a lot of wires looks like a rat's nest. Had all kinds of bell wire in there and stuff. I gave my guy, I said, look, you ought to really have the owner just give me a call. We might be able to help you out with this. The time went on. Finally, I got a call. The owner wanted to talk to me. And I said, yeah, sure, we could do that. We could fix the radio. We'll rewrite the software. And we'll make you 64 packs. That way you could run 32, and the other 32 could be getting dressed while the other ones are playing. So we worked it out so it was just a ridiculous deal. I mean, we lost $8,000. I didn't care. I just wanted to play the game. And that was kind of done on a paper napkin kind of thing. And to this day, we still make Lasertron. We did $1.2 million in Lasertron last year.
So Joe, do you still have your CoCos?
I have the CoCo with my digital sign that we made. That digital sign that I was talking about, by the way, was driven by a CoCo. And there is a package that drives the digital sign.
Wow.
And they ran a ribbon cable up to the sign. And the CoCo, you would type in whatever you wanted, and when you hit the enter key, it blasted it up to the sign. So, yes, I have that. I still have the patent on that, which I doubt is still any good.
Did you sell it as a product, or was that only for your use?
No, I did a real nice contract with that. I sold that. I sold the manufacturing rights to that to a company for some good money. But unfortunately, they couldn't install them because most of the cities, in fact, almost all the cities, claimed it was a moving sign. And there's ordinances in almost every city against moving signs. Even though it's only moving optically, the courts aren't sophisticated enough to understand that. They say, well, it looks like it's moving to me. We can't put it in. So they couldn't get permits.
Well, how big were these signs?
They went big, 2 feet high, 100 feet long if you want. It didn't matter.
Wow.
You could concatenate these things as long as you want them. And it was fast. It spewed that data up there fast. I mean, it would go like, 60 miles an hour if you wanted to.
And you designed the board for this?
Yeah, the interface card for the CoCo. The software I wrote, and I did the ribbon cable plugged into the actual digit boards, which were 2 foot high and 18 inches wide. And then you would just slide these in, and then you would use ribbon cables to connect them together. I've got those. I've got a small one, and I got the 2 foot one. I have a 1 foot one and 2 foot one. And they use regular light bulbs, regular 6-volt light bulbs, but they were, well, that's all they had back then. And they were filled with krypton gas.
Uh-huh.
Oh, so they were kind of cool. They were very bright white. They were nice things. They lasted a long time, a real long time. Especially the way I turned them on. I slowly turn them on and then go high and then shut them off. I took care of the filament. I made sure it was nice to the bulb.
Wow.
That was a great project. It was fun, and I have those, and I also have a couple CoCo 4s. I know my son Joey has a CoCo 4 with 2 1 terabyte drives. I have one with 2 terabyte drives somewhere. I don't know where it is. If it's in my, I don't think it's in the lab anymore. I think I moved it out to the storage.
You mean CoCo 3, right?
No, these were CoCo 4s. We were working on the CoCo 4 at the end. It had tons of RAM. It had, all the controllers were built in. You got your dual COM port. You got your Kentai controller with your SCSI drives. You had up to 2 drives you could put in there, and it all kind of fit in a PC case.
So was this a board that you worked on to sell eventually, and didn't sell?
We were looking at it, but it's just the PC was coming on so strong, and we really needed the business software, and there wasn't an awful lot of that for the CoCo around.
Right. And this thing had a 6809 in it, just like the CoCo 3?
Yeah, it actually was. Our prototypes were just that board. And then we would plug in stuff into the board, like the RAM.
Right.
Remember, I used to modify and plug the RAM in?
Did you go to Tandy with this idea at all, or are you just going to try to sell
No, we never even talked to Tandy. We never talked. No, Tandy was ridiculous. We were trying to get the price of those drives down for the CoCo users in our club. We had 350 members, and they all wanted a hard drive. Well, they went like $1,500 for them. I think the lowest they went is like $795 for a 5 meg drive. 5 megs? Are you kidding me? 5 meg? What is that? And they didn't have the RGB DOS, so you couldn't put the disk, archive all your
disk-based stuff didn't work on it. Right, correct.
We could archive the floppies on there, and then if the floppy went bad, we didn't care because it was faster anyway to pull it up off the disk drive.
Yep.
And I tried to make the commands easy to get to the disk drive to find them. There were shortcut keys and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a beautiful tool for somebody learning the computer. It's just like that Mel Bay book if you're going to learn the guitar. It's just got the chords in it. And you just go through and run through the chord. That's the same thing they should have with the CoCo. They should have had something like that and something in the school for them to play with. Now they jump them into, I don't know, the kids coming in that I'm hiring, they don't want to do any of that. They want to just take an iPhone, stick it on the slot car, run the app, and Bluetooth it into the motor controller. Not do anything really.
Yeah.
So that's what they're kind of putting out now, and it's a lost art, and it's something that's very important. Somebody better know how that crap works inside. That's all I got to say.
Yeah.
Somebody. Because when we're gone, guys, there's nobody going to be there that knows what's inside there, how it works. And that's not a good thing for me to think about,
Yeah, well, until we're dead, we'll at least have our CoCos to play with.
That's right.
Yeah, I have some CoCo. I kept one of the. I've got a machine, a sample of the machine we put in for the dig, to call before you dig machine with that controller, and I got a couple of CoCo 3s with the cards, with the cards to plug in. I mean, you really could do anything you wanted with that CoCo.
Yep.
Once you got into that bus, you could talk to the PIA, to talk to the bus, and then write the code to talk to the PIA, to talk to that bus, to talk to your board. You could do whatever you wanted. You can't do that nowadays.
Joe, I've enjoyed talking to you or hearing you talk about your CoCo experience, your overall experience. Maybe we'll have time to talk to you again sometime.
It's really nice meeting you guys and talk to you. Well, it's great. I'm glad to talk to you, CoCo guys. You guys are real enthusiasts.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, sir.
Definitely. Thanks, Joe. We appreciate your time and talking to us.
A lot. Thank you, sir.
Great.
Wouldn't it be great if you could get everybody's Christmas gifts at the same place? Well, maybe you can. I'll let you in on a little secret. The Holiday Gift Center at Radio Shack. After all, everyone loves electronics. And who has more favorites than Radio Shack? Calculators, radios, personal stereos, computer accessories. Oh, plus all kinds of handheld electronic games for the kids. So take care of everybody on your list. Make it a Radio Shack holiday.
Have you ever needed to keep a family budget, estimate interest on your savings account or other investments, predict inflation's effect on your money, or figure interest on a loan? Maybe you sat down with a calculator or pencil and paper in hand, but were discouraged by the amount of time involved or the complexity of the calculations. Spectaculator can make quick work of these and many other problems that come up every day. You just give Spectaculator the figures it needs to work with, tell it what to calculate, and in one step, Spectaculator displays the results you're looking for. Long columns of calculations that took hours to wade through by hand are handled by Spectaculator in a matter of seconds. You can instantly recalculate using new figures and new ways of producing results. Print your information on a line printer or save to disk for future use. Spectaculator requires a TRS-80 color computer equipped with extended BASIC, disk drive, and disk interface.
Welcome, CoCo Cruisers, to this month's tech segment by Mr. John Linville. Hello. This month I thought I would touch on a little technique or technology, or it's kind of both, known as binary coded decimal. Binary coded decimal is a class of binary encodings, so ones and zeros, to represent decimal numbers. So where each decimal digit is represented by 4 bits. So the normal binary encoding, 4 bits gives you 16 possibilities. So 0 through F in a normal binary number system. So you basically use less bits or less of the values that are available for you to make the bits line up kind of nicely, so that essentially when you look at the hexadecimal representation of the bits, they line up so that they actually look like decimal values. So, it's clever, it's a little wasteful, but, it has its uses, right? You're just using the 4 bits in a binary nibble to represent a decimal digit. So computers encode numbers as binary numbers. They don't necessarily lend themselves to display, mostly because humans don't think in terms of ones and zeros, so they kind of need to be converted into something else anyway. Normally we convert them to decimal digits for a display, like the monitor, or perhaps like a calculator keypad or a calculator display or something. But the symbols, obviously, the computer doesn't even know about the symbols. It just knows about the numbers it's using to display them. So you can't really do any useful math on the symbols directly, which the computer really doesn't even know about, or even the numbers representing the symbols, because they don't necessarily relate to the symbols. BCD, or again, binary coded decimal, it's kind of an in-between compromise. So you get what's a less compact encoding of numerical values, meaning the encoding is a little bigger than what it has to be to store the information. But the encoded values are easier then to convert to human-readable symbols, or in some cases to convert back from a human-readable symbol to the BCD value. So that lends itself to certain applications and kind of gets into why it's useful. But Before I move on, I'll mention that there's at least 2 variations on BCD. The 2 major ones we normally talk about would be unpacked BCD, where basically you have 1 decimal digit per byte. So I think in terms of 2 hexadecimal values, so the first one would be a 0. And so you get 1 digit per byte. So something like 1,000 would take 4 bytes, 1000. Whereas you have a little more normally, and certainly what the 6809 kind of supports with its instruction set, at least is packed BCD, in which case you put in 2 digits per byte. So the decimal value of 1000 then would be 2 bytes, 1000. So 10 in the first byte and 00 in the second byte. Or normally in 2 bytes, of course, you can store up to 65,535. You get a lot less density in your encoding. Part of the overhead of an application is going from your internal encodings to what you have to display to the user. So sometimes those conversions can be expensive or painful enough that it's worthwhile to trade a little storage for the time or effort of doing the conversions. So, all right. So why is this useful? So BCD's main virtue, I think this comes from Wikipedia. BCD's main virtue in comparison to binary positional systems is its more accurate representation and rounding of decimal quantities, as well as its ease of conversion into conventional human-readable representation. So, take those separate parts. First part, higher precision mathematical results for humans is basically what it's talking about, when the accurate representation and rounding. So I think we've all probably at one point or another, playing with a digital calculator or something, you come up with a math operation where maybe you do a fraction or a division value, and it comes up some long string of 0 point blah 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 blah, and then you go and sort of undo the operation. So let's say you divided by 7, and you got 0 point blah 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 blah, and then you multiply by 7, and instead of getting back a normal 13 or whatever, you get 12.53911, whatever, you get another blah 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 blah. So that's because there's when you talk about, well, we've all seen 1 divided by 9, you get 0.111111. Anytime you get that kind of lengthy, the repeating decimal or something like that, when you go to convert that to a different numerical base, sometimes you're going to get values that just don't convert correctly. So you get these conversions that don't work very well when you go in between decimal and binary values. And we've all heard of the jokes about the old Pentium processor 20 years ago or whatever having mathematical errors, and that is an issue. But even without that, you just sometimes get conversions between different numerical bases that they're not very pretty, even if they're still sort of accurate, with at least in terms of repeating decimals or whatever. If you have an application that wants numbers processing done for humans, some sort of scientific calculation, or maybe protected for decimals, if you're doing your taxes, it might be better to have the math just done right in decimal. Conversion or other problems you're going to have are going to be the same problems you're going to have when you do it on pen and paper, because it's the decimal base is the issue. So, all right. Part 2 of this is easy to convert between BCD and then whatever human readable representations you have. Typical is to conversion to ASCII value or whatever, a screen code for a video game. And so usually these things can be lined up or either are lined up in terms of like ASCII or whatever, or can be lined up in terms of, your graphic assets in your game or whatever, so that they map pretty well to the encoding data of a BCD value. Now you may have to, if it's packed to BCD, you may have to do some conversions to get 2 digits out of 1 to then, so you basically convert to unpacked or whatever to then use them, but it's not that hard. So, It's a little masking and shifting, and you're in business. So this is probably the best application, or just off the top of my head, for the audience of interest for BCD. Of course, is for tabulating scores or keeping scores in a computer game. You can store the scores in BCD formats, for example. Then you have essentially none or very little special code for score tabulation. There's very little or no math required to then display your scores. So it's basically a win-win. So it's a cool technique. I used it for doing the counts in Xmas Rush. Kind of did what I'm going to call a manual mode of this for doing the scores in Farfall, which was a combination of not being very familiar with BCD on the 6809 when I wrote Farfall, and also because of the kind of the weirdness of how you have to write numbers out in the SG12 video mode. It is a good idea to be able to keep your math in a binary format or in a decimal format when you're going to then display it in decimal for a variety of reasons, both ease of your own programming and sometimes for your accuracy of your results. Okay, so with that said, how do you go about using it, right? So the 6809 has support for BCD math. So built into its instruction set, 6809 programmer can slip into and out of BCD operations essentially seamlessly. These ensuring proper usage of BCD values is completely the responsibility of the programmer. So you are warned there. Anyway, one way that some processors do BCD math support is to actually have a math mode in the CPU. So I'm really only mentioning this here because this is what the 6502, which we all have to acknowledge is a popular processor in other parts of the retro world. That's how the 6502 did this BCD math. You'd put the processor into decimal mode and then do your math and then put it back into binary mode or whatever they call it. If you were going to do that on the CPU, on the 6809, you'd probably do that by setting a CPU state using an OR CC or AND CC combination. So this would be similar to how you put the 6809 or put the 6309 into native mode, or how you enable or disable interrupts at the CPU. Anyway, I only mention that just because I want to emphasize that's not what the 6809 does. We are not the 6502. If you're a 6502 programmer trying to listen in to what the other side does or whatever, maybe you should listen up, because we don't do it that way. So go ahead and forget all of what I just said, because the 6809 does not do any kind of modal operation. It doesn't put itself into a decimal math mode like the 6502 did. So what do we do? Well, before I get quite to what we're going to do, I'm going to say one other thing you can do, and that's sort of what I was talking about when I did with Farfall, is you can explicitly write code to do BCD-style math operations if you want. And, of course, that means when you do math, you're going to have to then manually check whatever values you get for overflows, possibly in each nibble, checking for half-carry values. Is there a good reason to do this? No, probably not. I did it in Farfall. Once I kind of figured out how it worked, I did something different in Xmas Rush. Probably will continue to use BCD math for scorekeeping, just because it's actually kind of easy and nice to keep things that way. But, so one reason it might be worthwhile, and it actually does sort of apply to what I did in Farfall, is remember I mentioned that you could do either packed or unpacked BCD. The processor itself is going to work with a packed BCD, so 2 nibbles for 2 decimal digits. But if for some reason you want to do unpacked BCD, so 1 byte with 2 nibbles for 1 decimal digit, a whole byte, then you could do a manual mode of operation. Even in that case, it might be easier just to do it sort of in the native, well, not quite native, or the 6809 supported BCD mode to get a packed value, and then unpack it forever how you need to use it. But, that's going to be up to you. So So I would not recommend doing manual motor operations, but you could do it. Okay, so how do you actually do it on the 6809? Okay, buckle up. This is going to be rough, okay? This is going to be real tough. You're going to have a hard time getting this. You do the normal addition on the A register. So you either use the add A, ADDA instruction, or add with carry A, let's add ADCA, or even the INC A or DEC A. I think INC A or DEC A will work. I may have to check that because I know they're a little different about how they set the flags. So anyway, they'll probably work, but your mileage may vary. You may want to check that out before you go using it, or at least test it. Anyway, so you're going to do a normal addition operation on A, so specifically add A or add with carry A. And then basically your next instruction needs to be a DAA. And DAA is officially decimal addition adjust. And so basically it evaluates the results, looks at the nibbles for which ones are legally BCD encodings and which ones aren't, checks the carry flag, probably checks the half carry flag in there, which is kind of why half carry exists, but I don't see it in the description of DEA, but it seems like there's no other reason for half carry to exist. But you can read about it in the programmer's manual, but basically it corrects based on the values that are written in your register and the carry flags, possibly the half carry flag, or likely the half carry flag. Then it determines if there needs to adjust the values, and it does so, and will turn them back into a legally BCD encoding representing the value that you just did. That's the result of whatever math you just did on that register. Okay, so yeah, let me repeat all that, or at least part of it. Essentially, you do a normal math addition on the A register, and then you execute DAA, then you're done. That's pretty much it. Now you can string that out to multiple bytes using carry or whatever. Make sure you do them in the correct order from the least significant to most significant or whatever, so the carry propagates correctly. But that's pretty much it. Using it from there, you'll have to figure out, but just keep in mind that the decimal encoding, and if you need to convert them out to something for display, you mask them out nibbles at a time, and just use them. Really not that hard. Okay, there are a few caveats. I'll go ahead and throw that in. So with both the values that you're dealing with, before you do the addition, they need to be in a proper BCD form. So each nibble needs to be between 0 and 9. The instructions are still going to execute even if you don't do this. You might want to experiment and see what you can come up with, if you can think of a useful way to do something with this. But basically, it's a garbage in, garbage out. If you don't feed it BCD, then you're probably going to get back wacky results. So if you're trying to do BCD, then ensure that your inputs are always going to be in a valid BCD format. The next caveat is there's not really an easy way to convert to and from BCD. And when I say that, I mean there's not like some magic instruction to do it. If you needed to convert to BCD value, then you're going to have to do, modulo operations or whatever, or divisions or multiplications or, whatever it has, whichever way you're going, whatever you're starting with, you're going to have to figure it out, I guess is my main point. So it's a bit of a caveat. Now, the great thing about scorekeeping is, scores all start at 0, and 0 is a BCD value. And so if you're only ever incrementing the score with a BCD value, like, 100 or something like 100 points at a time, then it all should work out. But again, your mileage may vary, but it's a caveat, but you just stick to it. Stick to the BCD formats for your inputs, and you should be fine. Now here's a little reminder. So I wrote it this way, that there is no DAB. So DAA is decimal addition adjust. So I guess it's not just for A specifically. That last A doesn't actually stand for the A accumulator. But just to emphasize that there's no decimal adjustment for B. It's not decimal adjust for A, it's decimal addition adjust. But it only affects A. So back to my crappy notes, and at least there's no DAB. So there's no decimal adjust for B. It's all just for register A. So make sure you're using register A, I guess is the point, because there's no way to point it at another register. And then the next line, this one fits a little better, I guess. So there is no DSA. So there's no decimal. It's decimal arithmetic adjust. There's no decimal subtraction adjust. The Barden book actually has a comment that suggests that the DAA should work after subtraction. I have not run any code, so I don't know. It's possible it works. You're going to have to verify that for yourself. That is definitely an exercise for the reader, for the listener. I'm basically too lazy to have run the experiment. Shouldn't take long if you do want to run the experiment. Let me know how it works out. But it looks to me the best you could hope for is that maybe it would flip over and start showing negative, from 0 to -9 or something like that. It might work. Probably doesn't. But that's your caveat. If you want to use it, you better figure out if it works. All right. Another caveat. No support for mul at all. Multiply. Multiply normally would be, put one value in the A register, one value in the B register, you multiply, the D register gets the result. How would you even convert that over anyway? If you want to do decimal multiplication, you're going to have to write it yourself, but at least you've got the BCD arithmetic already built in if you want to do that. So you're not going to do a mul followed by DAA, or if you do, God knows what you get. So in conclusion, just want to point out that BCD, or binary coded decimal, either packed or unpacked, is a valid numerical storage strategy for some purposes, particularly if you're manipulating a value that's ultimately going to communicate with a human. There's a good chance that you're going to need to convert it to a display value. That'll probably be a little easier if you can work through BCD. But I mean, it's a computer that works for free. What you buy. So do your best. But anyway, it is a valid numerical storage strategy. So the 6809 does facilitate using BCD format for some arithmetic, basically addition on the A register operations. So, but it's not a panacea. You're not suddenly going to start doing all your math in BCD, most likely. There is a restriction on what register is useful, specifically the A register. And again, not all math is directly supported. Arithmetic pretty clearly is, but it's not too clear about subtraction. Maybe it works, maybe not. I'm betting not. And multiplication is not going to work. So anyway, so there you go. Another neat and nifty technique for your use in your assembly language programs. Maybe it's interesting enough to convince you to take the dive and move on from BASIC or whatever else you've been using in programming and assembly language. Or maybe it's just, a way to have killed the last 20 minutes or whatever. But hopefully you've enjoyed it. Normally I would say CoCo forever, and it's not a bad idea, but I'm going to say CoCo Mania because I'm trying to plant the seed for a future promotion coming up next year. So let's all be CoCo Maniacs together, all right? So CoCo Mania. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the show.
The color computer is a powerful home computer, but if you've tried writing programs, you'll quickly learn that editing is tedious and requires either perfection or a lot of retyping. Stop suffering. Get the WorkSaver from Platinum Software. The WorkSaver features full-screen editing. Simply use arrow keys to move to anywhere on the screen and instantly make changes to your code. Change line numbers, join lines together, duplicate lines and place them anywhere in your code. Bring up arrays on screen and edit them directly. Use two-stroke sequences for full keywords. Enjoy automatic line numbering and a numeric keypad. These powerful features and many more are made even easier with the included keyboard template.
I was excited about the idea behind it. I was curious whether or not it was going to be able to execute like it said it was going to. Absolutely flawless. I'm super happy with the quality. I'm super happy with the overall engineering of this. And obviously, I'm even more happy with what it gets done, how well it does it, and the short amount of time it takes.
The Worksaver is just $30 plus shipping and handling and includes a 28-page manual plus the keyboard template. Save yourself hours of typing and make your programming experience what it should have been in the first place with the Worksaver, only from Platinum Software. Plattsburgh, New York.
Welcome back to Neil's Corner on episode 66 of the CoCo Crew Podcast. This month I'm going to mention a game we covered in one of the news articles. The game is called Jumpy by Matchy Games. It is coded by Matt Chai back in 2019. How I missed this game, I have no idea, but I'm definitely glad Matt reposted it for all of us to see again. The name Matchy is a play on Matt's name. If you take his first and last name and put it together, that gives you Matchy. The game Jumpy is a clone of the arcade game called Doodle Jump. It is a platformer-style game. What caught my attention about this game is how similar it is to Farfall, and we all know how much I love the game Farfall. The main difference here is instead of falling down, you are springing up on the different platforms. The object is to keep jumping up from one platform to another, while constantly going vertically up the screen. As you make your way jumping from platform to platform, scrolling up the screen, you will come across different power-ups on some of the platforms. I thought this was a nice added bonus. My favorite power-up is the jetpack. With the jetpack, you can fly up the screen for a few seconds until the power-up runs out. The Fire FX on the jetpack looks awesome. I ran this game on a real CoCo 2 and not in an emulator. It worked very well with the joystick in the left port. This game requires a CoCo 1 or 2 with 16K of memory. Now apparently it also supports the CoCo PSG for sound and gamepad. However, I could not get this to work. I will have to reach out to Matt and see if there's a toggle command or such. Perhaps I have the CoCo PSG in the wrong MPI slot. Even without the CoCo PSG, the graphics and sound are fantastic. Other people who have tried this game I've noticed say it's very difficult and you need a sharp eye. I did very well for my first try, but that could also be all my hours of practice playing Farfall. If you'd like to give this game a try, and I do highly recommend it, you can obtain it from the CoCo Archives website, as Matt has uploaded it there for people to download and enjoy it. This really is a fun game you can play on your CoCo 1 or 2, and it doesn't require a 32 or 64K upgrade. Well, until next month, happy CoCo gaming and retro forever.
Dino Wars. 65 million years ago, giant carnivorous beasts roamed the earth, fighting for territorial dominance. The only rule? Survive. Each player controls a rampaging dinosaur. If you aren't quick, you'll find yourself ruthlessly attacked by your opponent. Develop your maneuvering skills. Then declare an all-out Dino War on your opponent. Dino Wars requires a TRS-80 color computer with 2 joysticks. 16K of memory recommended. From Radio Shack.
Well, it's that time. Just like finding yourself in the back of a Rainbow magazine. We have reached the end of the podcast. This concludes episode 66 of the CoCo Crew Podcast. We hope you enjoyed this month's episode. As usual, I'd like to thank our host, John Linville, for procuring all the news articles and providing us with another informative tech segment. Mike Rowan for editing and creating all the super fun commercials. Boise Pete, our CoCo historian. He remembers it, so you don't have to. Big thanks to Joe Scinta for giving us some of your time to record an interview with you. Last but not least, a huge thanks to all of you who listen and support us each month. We really do appreciate your support and feedback. Until next month, happy CoCoing and retro forever.
It's a blast from the past.
Please listen carefully.
CoCo. CoCo.
dance like there's no tomorrow.
What is this crazy rock and roll music anyway?
It's a blast from the past.
Dance, dance, dance. Dance, dance, dance.
CoCo. CoCo.